Welcome back for another Ashes of Creation monthly development update, this time for the month of September. This month's update was all about bows and the Ranger class, but we also got to see a glimpse of a faraway Alpha 2 dungeon. I gotta say that this monthly development update was really quite impressive, especially considering that the game is still in its pre-Alpha 2 work in progress stages. As always, chapter markers will be below. Let's jump right in. In this gameplay demonstration, Steven, the creative director of Intrepid, was playing as an Elven Ranger, and we got to see a few Ranger-specific class skills, but the main point of this demonstration was more so to show off the basic attacks for the long and short bow. In Ashes of Creation, your weapon choice will provide you with its own skill tree separate from your class's skill trees, so this is going to give players even more agency over the type of builds that they go for. Looking back at the Alpha 1 and WoW has the game improved since then, you can see here that there was a skill tree for passive skills, active skills, and then weapon skills. But at the time, the weapon skill tree was grayed out and we weren't able to use it. So you could have a cleric that's using a spear while another cleric is using a scimitar. And although they may be the same class, their weapon choice can make them quite different from one another, especially considering that several of the weapon abilities will have synergy opportunities with class skills. In this particular case, the Ranger using a short bow could be quite different from a Ranger using a long bow. Two different weapons with different skill trees and different basic attack patterns. I'll get more into a few of the Ranger skills in each type of bow here in a moment, but first have a look at the environment and how beautiful it is. This gameplay demonstration takes place in the Riverlands biome, which will be the largest biome area that we have access to in the Alpha 2, and Steven is running around some Aelan Empire ruins. Ever since Intrepid switched to Unreal Engine 5, the lighting in this game has been incredible. You can also see some fog on the ground as it's morning on the world of Vera in this demonstration, and the pollen floating around is representative of the season of spring. I've somewhat stepped away from the MMO genre over the past decade or so. To me, this looks incredible for this genre, and to think that this is just pre-Alpha 2 footage and we're nowhere near the final build. The enemies that you can see on the screen are shaman Minotaurs that are focused on the water element, and they have pets or companions that are called drudgers at their sides, which are these reptilian dog-looking creatures. Throughout the demonstration, you'll notice the Minotaurs using water-type spells and also a type of water shield that will mitigate some incoming damage. So jumping right into the Ranger skills, the first one that we got to see is called Quick Shot.
Spam 2 on one of them. Take that guy down. Alright, that was a quick shot right there.
Quick Shot is an ability that has 3 charges, and each shot does more damage than the last shot to the target that you're attacking. You'll notice that the first arrow here did 284 damage, the second one did 313, and the final shot did 341 damage. Now each quick shot has its own cooldown, so you don't necessarily have to shoot all 3 of them at one time. But if you want to get the most damage out of this skill, it's probably a good idea to do that triple burst fire. So you're encouraged to shoot all 3, but at the same time it will take longer for all 3 of those quick shots to be off their cooldowns. So sometimes it may actually benefit you to just fire 1 or 2 depending on the situation. When you hit an enemy with Quick Shot, you'll notice a Quick Shot icon that shows up underneath the enemy's health bar. And this is a timer that indicates how much time you have to shoot another Quick Shot before that damage boost goes away. Up next is the Sniper Ranger ability, and this is an ability that roots you in place, but you can press and hold it, and if you can hold it long enough until it's fully charged, which is indicated by a little flash, you'll shoot a really powerful arrow at your opponent.
The basic attack, but a lot more powerful. You can hold this, and when you see that little flash there at the end, that indicates.
So you pay the price of loss of mobility for the gain of some sweet damage. Notice the particle effects and animations. Intrepid is really going for that Ranger nature feel. Now the coolest Ranger ability of them all, and the last one that we got to see in this demonstration, is called Airstrike.
Airstrike does a lot of things. It moves the character in the direction that you're facing.
If you activate Airstrike, it shoots you forward into the air in the direction that you are facing, and it rains projectiles down in the path that you're going. Each of these projectiles will do AoE damage and also ensnare targets with roots and vines, as you can see here when the projectiles hit the ground. All of these abilities will have cooldowns, especially this one, the airstrike, because it is quite powerful. But there are no cooldowns in this particular demonstration, so Steven's able to use them as much as he wants. And that's all that we got to see for now for the ranger skills, but we did get some information and some demonstration on the short and longbow. So like I mentioned earlier, each weapon type will come with its own weapon skill tree. So the short bow will have a different skill tree than the longbow. We didn't get to see any of these weapon specific skills, but it is important to keep this in mind when choosing your weapon. If you use a short bow, for their basic attacks, these types of bows will allow for fairly quick fire rates, and also allow for good mobility. Longbows will have longer fire rates, and your character will move much slower while shooting than if you had a short bow. But longbows will also deal more damage, and they also give you, the player, the ability to charge up their shots. Kind of like the ranger's snipe ability that I showed off earlier, just not quite as epic and powerful. So right here you can see a side-by-side comparison of Steven using a short bow on the left screen and a longbow on the right. Clearly these two bows will allow for different playstyles. If you plan on fighting more on the front lines and hopping around everywhere and moving around with speed, the short bow might be the type of bow for you, while players who prefer to take it a little slower and perhaps position themselves a bit further from a battlefield will likely fit better with the longbow. Once again, this is a pre-Alpha 2 work in progress demonstration, so everything's subject to change and of course improve. But all of this, in my opinion, looks really good. The bows have really good sound effects, and you can hear the whizzing arrows going by.
Yeah, I like in the solo.
And when they hit their targets, you can hear that impact, which is something that I think is very important for any game's combat system. In the far off distance from where Steven's character is, we got to see an Alpha 2 dungeon called the Tower of Carthan. I think it was Carthan. So before the apocalypse, Carthan was a city in the Aelan Empire that had a great mage population. And during the final days, before the entire planet basically was destroyed, desperate measures were taken in the city's tower. And this is what remains of it, and as you can see, it appears to be quite dangerous and magical. The tower will be a dungeon that is intended for several groups to exist within, so it sounds like it's quite large. I'm definitely very excited to check out this vertical type dungeon in the Alpha 2. And the last thing that I'll talk about from the demonstration is the tab targeting versus the action combat. I'm still a little confused here, as it seems like tab targeting is still always going to be the way to go if you want to optimize your combat capabilities. And action combat is more so here to change it up and add some variety to the combat feel, but we did get to see both styles here, and I got to mess around with both styles, their earlier versions in the Alpha 1. So tab targeting is what you would expect. You lock onto a target with tab, the closest target will be selected first, and then you can shoot your bow or use your class skills and they'll automatically target the opponent that you have selected. For the action combat, with the press of a button, a reticle will appear on your screen and you can now shoot or swing freely. This also works similarly for melee weapons, and if you want to learn more about those types of weapons and the demonstration that we got on those, I'll leave a link below to a recent video that I made. The cool thing about action combat with a ranged weapon is that you can fire your weapons at any time at anything. So if you're shooting from a castle wall down into a swarm of attacking enemies, you can just aim your reticle into the mob and watch your projectiles hit their targets below. A little bit more engaging than tab targeting, I would say, and you can freely shoot around without having to cycle through enemies with tab. Now, there's going to be some abilities that force you into action type combat, such as abilities with AoE cones, but it still seems like the majority of skills in this game will be compatible with tab targeting. When in action combat, there will be a hard lock-on and also a soft lock-on. If you're in action combat and you don't have a target selected, and I'll put this in quotation marks, the game will smartly choose whatever target it thinks is the most appropriate for where your screen is and attack that target. And this is called a soft lock. If you were to actually select a target in action combat, this is a hard lock onto a target, and it's represented differently visually. And then you can actually take your reticle off the target and it won't change targets. You can also tab switch between enemies while in action combat. So like I said, it's still a little confusing for me as I can't really tell what the real goal is here. And perhaps Intrepid might be focusing on too many types of systems for their own good, but I'm staying optimistic, and I'll certainly break it all down in the Alpha 2. Now, I do know that in the Alpha 1, it was actually pretty fun switching from tab to action combat, as it added some more variety to the basic combat. But in a game that has so much PvP, I'll probably mostly be using whatever system gives me the best chance at killing things. And that'll be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said earlier, I'll leave a link below to the monthly development update where they went over some of the basic weapon attacks for melee weapons. And I also do have an Ashes of Creation playlist where I've done like 30 videos on this game. Now, I usually go over the 3D art and also the Q&A in these videos, but this one's already starting to get quite long, and there really wasn't anything too interesting in those sections, but I'll be sure to cover those in the next update. I'll catch you guys on the next one.